Excellent. So I will jump right in then. Hello, everyone. You all, absolutely everyone here knows me, and I'm confident of that. But for anyone who might watch the recording, I am Emily Mitchell, and I am the Assistant Library Director here in Penfield. And I wanted to take a quick 20-minute session here to talk about a lot of the assumptions that I think that a lot of faculty, I mean, I do it too. We all assume that students just know these things because it's been so long since we learned them that we kind of forget that like no one was born knowing this stuff. So I've got a little bit up front, and then I'm going to get into individual assumptions that I've noticed over the years or had other librarians tell me about. And apparently I have to make sure I'm on the right screen before I arrow forward. So students don't know what they don't know. If you ask students, do they know how to do research? I'll give you solid odds that a lot of them will say yes, and they shouldn't. Some of them do recognize that they wish they felt more confident and love to, well, I don't love to hear it. It would be nicer if they were confident and were good at it. But students don't know what they don't know. They think they know when they don't. There are studies backing this up. I've got one up on my slide. There are also a lot of studies about like the number of librarians full-time in K-12 schools is decreasing. So in New Jersey from 2010 to 2019, that number dropped by like 20%. It went down by a fifth. So there are fewer people around to teach students these things in high school. A student might not have ever worked with a librarian, might not understand why they would want to. And I have up this link to Student Civic Online Reasoning, a National Portrait, which of course is going to open on the absolutely wrong screen. And now I'm going to spend forever fighting with my monitors. But I wanted to highlight this. This is a study from the Stanford History Education Group. They worked with more than 3,000 students across the country, so almost 3,500. And they were finding that like 96% of these students did not understand why it might be problematic to get your data about climate change from a website put out by someone with ties to the fossil fuel industry, which to me, I'm like, oh my goodness. And they had other things too. So they were looking at like a grainy video of ballot box stuffing, supposedly, and 52% of students didn't realize this was a hoax, even though it's an easy thing to search and find out. So we think that students have some of these research skills. Students think they have some of these research skills. Not so much. And now I'm going to try to get back to my slides. Hopefully that worked. So that's kind of the problem. And then we get into some of the assumptions that I see in people's assignments, right? So I know that a lot of instructors will ask students, you know, you've got to cite however many sources, but they'll say, don't use websites. And I get where they're coming from because we just saw that the students are struggling to tell like, oh, this website has ties to the fossil fuel industry and it's about climate change. Maybe that's a problem. But if you look at my example screenshots, these are just a few examples. Like, what if your student had something that like census data would be absolutely fantastic for? Well, that's a website, and you just told them they can't use it. And I've actually had at the research help desk here a student who came up and said, I need to find sources. I'm not allowed to use websites. And when I tried to take them to the library website, they said, but that's a website. And it is. They are not wrong. So if you're going to say no websites, maybe discuss with your students exactly what that means. Are there exceptions? Are there times when a website might be okay? And to go a little bit further with this one, websites continued. These are 3 images of books. I know that, you probably know that, But the one on the left is an ebook from the library. The one on the right is an ebook from Project Gutenberg. And if all you think of when you think of books is a physical object like you see in the middle, like what are the visual cues that you are looking at in those other two to tell you that this thing counts as a book, not a website? To a student, you're accessing it on a screen. That is a website. So really like being conscious of what is it that you're looking for that tells you this is a book, and making sure that your students are aware of that too. The moment when a student asked me that, I was just like, yes, it's going to be okay. You can use the library website. So another one, kind of a specific website in this case, if you tell your students don't use Wikipedia, I'm behind you. I do not want Wikipedia to be the only source that they are using as they write their college research papers. That is not college research. However, I have had students come to me with articles like the one on the right, environmental bisphenol A disrupts methylation of steroidogenic genes in the ovary of something. If you are not someone who studies that, you don't know what those words mean. I don't know what half those words mean. My life will be much easier if I can go to a reference source like Wikipedia and maybe look up some of those things. And you know what? If you want me to explain this research paper to you in my paper that I am turning in, I'm going to do a better job if I'm allowed to quote a source like Wikipedia. So Wikipedia and similar sources should never be where a student is ending their research, but telling them not to use it at all kind of hamstrings them. I just don't know how you can ask someone who doesn't know a subject at all to tackle something like what's on the right without being able to look up all these things. So that's a thing that I have seen a lot. If you tell your students to use journal articles or to use library databases, and I didn't have a nice picture for this one, I apologize. Making sure that they understand what those things are and the relationship between the two. So just the other day, I was talking to some students and they had run some database searches. And then we were up on the library's second floor and I was pointing out the bound periodicals there, right? And like, oh, look, this is where we used to get journal articles before the databases. They didn't know that what they were finding in the library databases was journal articles. I don't think they had ever seen a physical journal. I don't think they understood any of the process of like, what is an article? Why do we write in that format? What does any of that, what does that mean? What does it tell me about this source? So if you're asking students to use these things, like just being mindful of what they are and making it clear to students what these things are. Because it's possible that no one has told them this. And as I mentioned at the beginning, no one is born knowing these things. I certainly was not born knowing these things. Another one, I think people do realize that we have to teach students what a primary source is. But if you have students in your class who maybe are majoring in something other than your discipline, they might have a really different idea of what a primary source is than you are assuming. So on the right, I've got a primary source. And on the left, I've got, it's not actually a primary source, but it's a representation of a primary source, right? So if you've got an art student in your biochem class, or if you've got a biochem student in your art class, very different ideas of what it means for something to be a primary source. And there are other majors this applies to as well. And I'm going to go even further. If you tell an art student or, a history student to use primary sources, we don't have the Mona Lisa up on the third floor of the library, right? We do not have a Shakespeare First Folio down in special collections. I wish we did, that would be great. So how close to the primary source do we actually have to get? So if you want a student to write about, say, the Mona Lisa, is it good enough to grab a JPEG off the web? Would it be better if they found a high quality art book that had a print of it? Is that good enough? Or do they need to take a field trip to the Louvre? Like, clarifying that with students, making it very clear, what does it actually mean? And what does it mean in this course? Because those could be two different things depending on what you're studying. This is another one I didn't have a good image. If you tell your students to use scholarly sources, please do not leave it at that. I am a librarian with something like 15 years of experience. I have no idea what you are talking about when you tell a student to use a scholarly source. And if they come and ask me, I am not going to have an answer for them. I assume that a peer-reviewed article is probably a scholarly source, but is a primary source scholarly? Like, is the Mona Lisa a scholarly source? I don't know what you have in mind. Is a book a scholarly source? And if so, is it any book or only book from like a university press or something? Does the publisher matter? You got to tell me more if you're going to say scholarly sources. I respect the intention of telling students to use scholarly sources, but unless you're going to clarify it, it's just not helpful. And then tying in with that, right? So if you're going to tell your students what counts as a scholarly source, make it so that that's worth some points in the assignment. Please do not just grade based on you got to have 3 sources and you got to cite them in APA style. If that's all you're looking for, all they have to do is hit Google. They can do it in like 2 minutes, done. If you want someone to actually go out and find the best sources, I mean, that's going to take, it could take hours, it could take days if they have to get something through interlibrary loan. It's a very different ask. And I do have a collection of rubrics if you're looking for inspiration for how to grade students' sources. You know, what should you look for? What should you tell students that you are looking for? Because we want to make these expectations very clear to students so that they know what you need, so that they know what they need to do, so that they know what they do and don't understand, right? We want them to have a better handle on, do I already have a handle on this? Metacognition, it's great. So we can, I think we have time. We can jump over. I've got a bunch of rubrics listed on this LibGuide from, oh, I think I made it last year. So if you hit this and then come to assignments and assessments, and the librarians from, I want to say it's Onondaga Community College, made this. It's a pretty great rubric for evaluating student sources. I like that one as a basis. I'm not going to try and open Word documents and things right now in this short session. But I've also got some other ones. So this information literacy value rubric from the American Association of Colleges and Universities. It's not actually intended for grading assignments. It's intended for thinking more broadly about a program, about students' knowledge and skills. But you can pull out a lot of the concepts in it and apply it to how and what you're looking for in terms of the sources that a student turns into you. So all of that is here, integrating information literacy into your courses. This is a page we've got. It's linked from the library website. Any librarian can help you find it, or I am happy to help you find it if you ask me at a later date. So yeah, really making clear your expectations about sources, and also recognizing the work that goes into finding good sources. I think is my main point with that one. And my final point, I think it's my final point, we'll find out in a moment. Because so many students haven't necessarily come from a place where librarians were available to help them, They may not have been in a library before, right? They may not know that like getting research help from a librarian is a fantastic, wonderful, encouraged thing that like respected people do. We want them to do this. So please just making sure that your students know they can get help. Any librarian is always happy to help. I've got the screenshot of our Get Research Help page up here. We are not kidding around when we put like chat, phone, text, email, visit us in person. We will set up Zoom meetings with you. Like, pick your format. There's a librarian who will work with you in that format. We are not too busy to help you or students with research questions or with information literacy questions or with anything tangentially related to this. We would love to talk to you and your students. And I'm pretty sure, yep. So that was my last slide. I've got a bunch of references for the reading here. Lots of really interesting research being done about things that students do and don't already know as they come into college. Lots of really interesting studies being done, like the one I flipped to at the very beginning, the civic online reasoning one. Studying like, can students figure out information versus misinformation online? Really like interesting and enlightening to read. I recommend them all. And I think I just finished with 3 minutes to spare. So I guess I could take questions. I have a very librarian heavy audience here, so I don't know if you all have questions for me. Did I leave anything out, fellow librarians? Put you all on the spot.
I mean, everything you said made total sense. And stuff like the students not understanding what scholarly materials are. And then by extension, we don't really know what the professor means by scholarly materials because everyone sort of wants something different.
Right? It's different every time. It's my worst nightmare when a student comes up because I want to help.
Yeah.
And they're like, I just need like 5 scholarly sources. And I'm like, okay, did your professor tell you what counts as scholarly? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh boy, we're in for it now.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I think a lot of the students too coming from, like you said, the students are coming from schools that are underfunded and they don't have librarians. So they don't know that librarians want to talk to them and want to meet with them and we can help them.
Right. I've had so many people tell me, oh, I think you're busy. I don't want to bother you. And like, no, no, you are the reason I took this job. I wanted to help you. Come and talk to me. Yeah.
We're good.
Well, hearing no further questions, I will seek out the way to turn off the recording. So thank you all.
Just unmuted.
She remuted then.
Oh, never mind. She was taking things.
Ah, great.
I saw the camera come back on.
All right, I'm going to end the recording. If
Yep.
anyone does want to contact me later, again, I am Emily Mitchell. I am the Assistant Library Director, and I would love to talk to you.
And the recording should be up.